pretty much start. Okay, let me continue that. There we go.
Wow,
We'll wait a minute anyway.
19 people.
Great.
Hello.
Why, hello. Hi,
Hello.
Betsy. Hello, Betsy. I see people are popping up on our screen anyway.
Yep.
We'll start in probably 40 seconds.
Hmm.
Do you see the Asquam and Deerwood on your,
Yes.
okay, good.
Good.
Okay. Adam, what do you think?
That was everybody in the waiting room.
Okay, great. Well, we will get started. And I know that Susan Kemp is going to join us as well. She may be on right now, hoping she will help me with this. But anyway, welcome to our Thursday talk. I'm Kathy Weymouth. I'm part of the Holderness Free Library Friends Group. And probably for the last 2 years, we've been hosting virtual Thursday talks as a way to get to know Holderness businesses, Holderness friends, area people, and so on, but as well as the history of Holderness and Squam Lake. Tonight, we're fortunate to have one of the directors of Camp Deerwood, Lauren Thompson, and as well as Biff Sutcliffe. And Biff, I have to say, when I went online to look up your job, it was like the camp would not run without you. Been there 51 years, and you're the go-to person. So I hope they've got someone in training. I will add that Biff's wife, Janine, is also a member of our friends group and serves as the nurse, as one of the nurses or the medical center at Deerwood during the summer months, during their 2 sessions. So we're excited to have you here to share more about Camp Deerwood. And Lauren has put something up on the screen. If you have questions, you can go into the chat and put them there, or wait toward the end and have an opportunity to ask them directly. So welcome, Lauren and Biff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm guessing, are people able to see a full screen slide now with the blue and the title? If that's the goal anyway, and just wanted to make sure that there. And well, wonderful. I think Biff was contacted by Kathy about this and asked about, was there something about the Deerwood program or Deerwood history or that we could share. And so we've come up with some slides and stories that really cover, 130 or so years from Camp Asquam on our site through early days at Deerwood in the 40s and 50s to what's happening at camp now. So at some of them we'll go quickly through, and some will pause a little bit longer and share a story. And seeing Susan and Stacy there, we should have folded in some of the Singing Eagle Lodge history as well. That would have been a great opportunity. We've mentioned, mention of that, but I don't have the pictures that might do that justice as well. Okay. We, as many of many of all the organized camping movement started right on Squam in our area, and Ernest Balch starting Chicorowa on Church Island in 1881. And there's some debate over some of the dates. We've, when you read some of the sources, there's some conflict, but Camp Harvard was started in Rindge, New Hampshire, 1882 or 1883, and Winthrop Talbot became the director of that camp. Another early camp on Squam was Algonquin, and then Talbot moved Asquam over to Deerwood, or so what we call Deerwood, but over to Squam in Biff thinks maybe a little bit earlier. We're debating our sources a little bit, but a lot of our dates say 1887, but we think some of the buildings happened a little bit before that. This is Winthrop Talbot in the early days of Asquam. And, you know, it was, I think 1890 to 1920, they called the progressive era, and we're really thinking about ways to make life better for kids. And, you know, some of the cities that conditions were getting, you know, unsuitable for kids and raising kids. And so there were a lot of efforts at that time to improve both camps and playgrounds and museums. And some of the, some of the early, a lot of the early camps, I think, served the wealthier populations, and certainly Balch's Camp Chicoro was, you know, talked about as giving an alternative than spending their summers eating lobster at the resorts in the White Mountains, and giving them some more real experiences and focusing on character and mind, body, and spirit. But these are, you know, some of the lists talk about as many as 25 different camps on Squam and Little Squam over the years, and the remaining ones now are Camp Hale and Singing Eagle Lodge, which the latter half of the dates there have been in partnership with Deerwood, and on our site they closed for 7 or 8 years and had some reunions at Deerwood with some loyal alumni, and then asked about starting up camp in the mid-70s again for 2 weeks. And they do an amazing job packing their old 8-week program into 2 weeks at Deerwood. And that's been going for 40 years now, more than 40 years. And the JSLA camps, where Biff's brother was an early counselor, and Deerwood, just the children's camps that are left. Some dates from the early Asquam camp. Some buildings were there when Talbot, we think when Talbot came over, a few buildings, the modest buildings, but they built pretty aggressively starting in the 1880s, you know, improving the dining room and kitchen, the aristocracy hall. We've got pictures of these coming up, but it's one of our oldest buildings where we have use as a camper bunkhouse now. And then Biff's going to talk some about the, you know, the early 1900s, where they got Talbot started dreaming about a year-round camp and built a lot of facilities coming up. So here's very near the site of our main lodge now, and parts of this building have been moved and incorporated into our main lodge. This is the interior of the Patrician Palace, they called it. And a very similar view to what we see in some of our pictures today of the kitchen and dining room. The building has changed, but we love that they love their wraparound porches, and you can see on the left side of the building down through the woods some open archways where it was the dining room was just open to the porch, and a view out to the lake to the left. The chapter house is now our, this was built in 1893, and I think important visitors, the visiting preachers, I think would stay in the chapter house, and also it was tied to a more, you know, a broader organization of camps that, you know, a little bit like a fraternity house. This is one of Biff's favorite buildings in camp, the Stone Reservoir from 1900, and these were all buildings that were on the property in the early days of Asquam. Favorite until the roof starts leaking, which is just. We've got some old Asquam records, which provided some interesting stories, and and data and some of these pictures. Really, really fun to look through. And I think that Biff, you were going to talk a little bit about, I've got pictures here of a building on the left from Deerwood and a building on the right from Pasquaney, or sorry, the left hand, that building is still at Deerwood. It doesn't look like that now, but the left-hand one is from Camp Asquam. You want to talk about the connection, Biff?
Sure. In 1894, there was a counselor that worked for Winthrop Talbot at Camp Asquam, and he was so taken with the nature of camp and how it worked and the traditions and so on that had been set for close to 10 years at that point, that he got excited about starting his own camp. I believe his name was Wilson. I'm not sure of that. And so he decided to start his own camp and bought some property over on Newfound Lake and established in 1895 Camp Pasquaney, which is still in existence and a thriving camp. Wilson took with him a lot of the traditions that he had learned at Camp Asquam. And one of the things he did was, the first building was to build a building called headquarters. And he modeled the headquarters from a building at Asquam. The picture on the left is the headquarters at Asquam. On top of that building, they built this, it looked like a fire tower, but it was a mountain observing tower. A good view of Mount Washington and the mountains to the north. So what he did, he loved that roof structure and the idea of a headquarters being something like that. So at the very top of their hill overlooking Pasquaney, he built this building there that you see on the right. The things that he took in addition to the idea of a headquarters, a tradition of giving talks by the older counselors to the campers, not necessarily with a religious bent, but with certainly a spiritual and wisdom passing on, a thing called tree talks. Tree talks are given in front of a fire in amongst the trees. Deerwood still has tree talks and Pasquaney has tree talks. So we have 3 camps in history. He also took on the long trip, which you'll learn about in a few minutes in the slides, but a long trip is many-day trip, usually with covered wagons type thing, or horse-drawn wagons anyway, carrying a lot of the luggage. And they would go out for a week or longer, and a lot of them was a trek. One of their trips took them to New York State, all through Vermont and into New York. That long trip is still a part of Pasquaney's tradition. Deerwood has, for shorter trips, we have 3 and 4 day trips, but the long trip was something that Pasquaney continued on. Water sports was a big thing, competition. At the end of the season, the Pasquaney and Asquam and Deerwood all put on a big show for parents and for competition within the camp, all located on the lake. And at that particular point in time, baseball was really grabbing hold of this country, and Camp Asquam had a baseball team, and Pasquaney carries that tradition today. Baseball is still an important part of their tradition there. At Deerwood, it's just softball, and it's just a couple of times during the summer, but it's not a big deal. All right, Lauren, do you have anything to add to that?
But, I think I remember my dad reading and telling me about how they thought it was unhealthy to sleep down by the water. And so the 2 camps, shared the philosophy of putting the living accommodations up on the hill and then walking down to the water for recreating during the day. But But I think it didn't take long for lake dwellers to, you hear about a lot of houses being moved, and new building down by the water. This is, Biff was talking about some of the early sports, the lawn tennis, and our tennis courts are still right here. And it's fascinating to see that you can see all the way to what might be Cotton or Livermore. We don't have any views from this part of camp anymore with all the white pines growing up. But their land sports were, Biff said, baseball, tennis, track and field in the early days. And then their nature program, this is a cabin we call Ritz. Aristocracy Hall was their nature center. But and then they had the all the water sports. They thought canoeing was too dangerous in the first years of Asquam. They had rowboats and then barges, which they called barges, which were the crew kind of shell boats. It took a little bit longer, I think, for sailing to take hold. This is one of the stories of the long trip, and this particular one, the boys walk from Holderness over to Center Harbor, and then catch a boat to the Weirs, and then out to Cow Island, and visit there with Camp Idlewild. And it's actually fun for me to read that, because when I was a camper in the 70s, we paddled to Cow Island and camped there, and visited Camp Idlewild, which had just closed, and still had some of their facilities going. But
Lauren, may I add something?
Yeah.
Talking about long trips. One of the fun things, facts about Camp Deerwood is back in the early days, probably in the late 40s, Buck is Lauren's grandfather who started camp. They call him Buck here at camp. He decided that the young kids really needed a long trip. So they loaded up the kids in the cattle car, essentially a truck, and canoes on the trailer, and drove around through Tamworth and Sandwich and all around, and dropped the kids off at Sandwich Beach, told them they were in Canada and that they would paddle back to camp. So they spent 2 days on the lake paddling back to camp from Canada. Parents got a good kick out of the letters home.
The young boys will believe just about anything that 20-year-old counselors tell them. And this trip went on from Winnipesaukee up to hike Chicorowa, and then Whiteface, and then walked back down to Sandwich, where the camp boat they called the Asquam met them and brought them back across the lake. And these are not tents that are going on their backpacks. As Biff said, the wagons would be the support team, but this may be camped up in one of the intervales, up near, either Whiteface Intervale maybe, or up near Wanalancet. That's the Asquam, and I don't think this boat's still around. Does anybody know it? Well, we can ask at the end maybe if anybody's got the whereabouts of the Asquam. And they built a launch house on the lake where this boat had a roof over its head and walls around it. Just another excerpt from a long trip. I think the one that you just saw was from 1901, and this is 1902. An even longer trip. They took trains from Plymouth to Montpelier in Vermont, walked from Montpelier to Waterbury, where I live now, and climbed Camel's Hump and came down to Richmond, got up to Burlington. This is a little excerpt of, from the Burlington papers then, and the boys even made it over into the Adirondacks and Sable Chasm. So some, both adventure and important historical sites Talbot described as the importance of some of these trips. And then this is the start of some pictures that have to do with the winter camp. And Biff was gonna talk about the expansion by Talbot into a year-round venture.
Yes. Talbot really decided that he was on a good thing going for these kids coming from the cities, and really felt that a year-round exposure to country living, a little bit of farming, a little bit of handcrafts, and good counseling in arithmetic and English and writing. So he decided to start a winter camp. So he had the summer camp and winter camp going. 1899 was our best guess as to when he started it. One of the things that he needed to do was provide more housing, which was good for winter. So he built this building that you see here. The bottom section you can see is stone. That is still in existence. It was been our theater from 1945 to 2019. So the upper two stories were dormitory, living conditions for the kids, quite palatial when you look at these pictures. And at the same time that he built this, he also built a carpentry shop, a forge shop, a boat building shop, and stables. And he taught those crafts as well. They had a steam-powered gang pulley system for the wood shop, and taught the boys how to mill wood, fabricate metal pieces. They had tap and die sets. They made their own bolts and nuts. They built boats, and he also taught them how to do high pressure and low pressure steam systems. In addition to that, they started the boys learning how to deal with 4-cycle gasoline combustion engines. They're fairly new back then. And the Asquam boat that you saw the picture of was actually gasoline engine powered. There were 2 4-cycle engines that drove that boat. I don't know if you noticed, but there was no chimney on that boat. It wasn't steam, it was gasoline. So the boys learned how to diagnose problems and do the maintenance on all the 4-cycle engines.
That all set there, Biff?
Yep.
Okay. And then there were, probably, 35 years or so between Camp Asquam, which closed in and last year was 1909, and Deerwood, which started in 1945. It learned that Thomas Farnham, who was a former Asquam camper, bought the Asquam property at auction. And then Camp Woodcrest begun and lasted 6 years on the site. But not long. I think the wartime made things more difficult, certainly for finances and available young men perhaps, and then so it was privately held as a private camp, a place to go and recreate and hunt and fish. And the Farnham family, we think, owned it. It was willed by a woman named Mary Pease, I think is what I found, to Yale University. And I don't know, Biff, do you know if she was related or to Farnham, or?
I'm not really sure, and I can't figure out exactly how the transfer went. Farnham died in 1943. He was commissioner of the Red Cross during World War I, based in Serbia. And his collection of papers of correspondence from 1917 to 1919 are at Yale University, where he was comptroller from 1921 to I've forgotten what date, early 40s. So he was very much related to, involved with Yale. He actually went to Yale and Milton Academy and Hotchkiss, and his family are Yaleys. When he went off to war, the Camp Woodcrest couldn't continue on, and so it became its private estate. And he hired people locally to maintain the place, provide meals for his guests, and he had quite a few guests come up. The stone building that we mentioned before, which was originally a dormitory, he had torn the top 2 stories off and made it into his garage, which is the building that we now use. And the people could come up and spend time in the cabins. He actually put bathrooms in some of the buildings. So there was indoor plumbing, there was running water, and the staff could use the facilities, the waterfront facilities in the afternoons. They spent their mornings getting ready for all the meals and doing all the housework. Interesting thing is that Bill Batchelor, who was New Hampshire Supreme Court Justice, who just passed away in the last 2 years, at 90-something years old, a great guy. He and I toured camp about 8 years ago, and he gave me stories about being a worker for Farnham during the summers. His folks lived in what was the farmhouse called Ingleside, that was part of the camp property. And he grew up there, was born there and grew up there, went off to World War II. And then during that time, the place passed hands, and he could not come back. But he did come back when he was in his 90s, and we had a great tour, and he gave me some great stories about working for Farnham and all the people that came to visit.
So it was willed to Yale, and initially owned by a Harvard man. Talbot was from Harvard. And I don't think Yale would have sold it if they knew that my grandfather was about to become a Princeton coach. He and his cousin went up to Yale to make an offer, and the story goes that somebody said sold, and now we don't have to go up there to check on the play. They had never even seen the property. The people that sold it to him at Yale had didn't know what they were missing out on. All right, so this my grandparents visited in the early spring and took one look at the view and said, "This is the place." They were spending summers at Camp Kiev in Maine in the early 40s, where Buck was the head counselor and knew that he wanted to run a camp himself. And this was the property they, as soon as they saw, they knew it was the place. And I'm just amazed that he was able to get so many people, after buying the land in May of 1945, about 5 or 6 weeks later to start camp I have the picture coming up soon of the group, but this is kind of what they saw. There is a picture of the view in these old photos, but these were the buildings that were there, the main lodge and the kitchen and dining room. And then what was the aristocracy hall from Camp Asquam. Not in very good shape. A lot of work was done that first summer repairing the buildings. This was the first publication announcement of the opening of Deerwood in 1945 for $325 for the first summer at camp. And this is the crew of 19 campers, 7 or 8 staff, and right from the start, a chef and a nurse. And my dad and uncle, Ferris is on the left, and my dad is front center with the dog, and his brother Tommy is sitting on the raised step underneath the post on the right. And I was also kind of amazed at how quickly things grew. You know, reading the Asquam records, Talbot talked about 30 or so kids at camp, you know, 15 years into to their program. And, you know, just being able to start at 20 kids that first year, and then the growth through the 40s and 50s and 60s, a lot of building of, you know, both camper bunkhouses. And then also one of the things that I think really makes Deerwood unique today, when families ask, I talk about our senior staff, and we have over a dozen senior counselors, and 7 or 8 of them have come back to Deerwood summer after summer with raised their families there, and have been at camp for 15, 25, 35 years. Some early photos of camp. This is I think 1949 older camper group. And just put this picture back in with I think the young, maybe the junior counselors, the younger counselors on the left, but you can see the headquarters building back on what's now our basketball, or behind our basketball court, without the tower. You can see the tower that was there, but that building is in a different place now. It was cut in half and moved and turned into a camper bunkhouse. This is Buck and Len on the left, and Tommy on the right. And Ferris, you know, ran the show till about 1970 or so, when he retired from he coached at Princeton for 20 years in the 50s and 60s, and then turned the reins over to his 2 sons. We still have some pictures where the water looks just as clear. Some of the early Deerwood activities. Some power tools coming into play in the 60s. And power boats for water skiing, and I think maybe even power hair clippers. That the hairstyles in the 50s were some interesting photos. I think probably one of the first few years of archery. We don't shoot down towards our dining room or wood shop anymore, but in the early days. The tennis courts expanded. You know, Asquam had 2, and Deerwood added a 3rd in the late 60s, early 70s, and a 4th, and improved the 3rd and added a 4th in the early 80s. Some of the transportation Biff was referring to, we try to do it a little more safely now on the roads. But trips were a big part of the program, you know, like with Asquam, right from the start. My dad was proud to say that you know, Deerwood had paddled to the, you know, Rangeley Lakes for 75 years in a row, and you know, lots of trips are a tradition we repeat each year. Some of the backpacking with before the frame packs, you could see a few of the pack boards and things strapped to them. And some fun on the water. So this is about 25 years in, and you can see the camp grew pretty substantially, pretty quickly, probably up to about 100 campers by the 25th anniversary of Deerwood. A few just special events and traditions. You may have witnessed a ski show in the late 60s or through the 70s or early 80s. These boys are all holding flags. The parents are all watching over on the beach at the end, and the events go by. And This one is the HELLO flags and an exclamation point. There were 6 skiers saying that was the opening act, and you hoped that the O didn't fall or line up in the wrong place on the wrong side of the HE and LL, but it was quite a production, the ski show. And in the 80s, we decided it was a little too much to try to ask of the campers in the last few days of camp. That's one of our current waterfront directors on top of the pyramid there, and he's not even 50 years old yet, but he's been at camp about 40 years. So, and then just I'll go through a little more quickly here, some photos of current activities at camp. Beautiful calm morning on the water. You can see a water skier out in the distance and working on the canoeing and kayaking. Evening sail. Some newer activities have been added. The windsurfing is a lot of fun. The little guys will learn on a big wide board where you can balance, and then you work your way up to bigger sails and smaller, faster boards. The canoes look a little different nowadays, but they last a little longer in the whitewater. Some trips anyway, depends who's on them. Kayaking came into play in the probably around 1990 was we started doing more kayaking, late 80s. And we had water skiing right from the second year at Deerwood. It was a traveling Cypress Gardens ski salesman came up, and the Fabians were big water skiers and eventually had their ski school. But my grandfather pointed to one of his college lacrosse players and said, if you can get him up on water skis, we'll buy a set. And sure enough, they did, and became a great fun tradition. Catching in the lake and on the streams nearby, and it always a celebration. And if it's worthy enough, it may get traced on paper and put up in the main lodge, where we have probably 75 trophy cutouts going back 50 or 60 years. And our biggest fisherman in camp is our chef Clarence, who loves to show the boys how to turn their catch into breakfast. And then some of the activities up on the hill, archery is always popular, and we don't shoot towards the dining room anymore. We shoot out towards the road with the passersby. We've got a little buffer now. When in the old days there was no buffer. The rifle range is a popular place, and even the young boys can learn how to safely handle the rifles and respect the rules, and learn a lot about that there in terms of responsibility. The wood shop doubled in size in the mid 70s, and boys have get a lot of choice in what they can build. This boy in the front was doing what we called a MacFat, making a chair from a tree, just a green sapling, and was able to create a beautiful chair. The pottery and some of the this is an activity that I think just one other camp I know of has blacksmithing, and our forge is a wonderful place. 2 alums, Dave Little and Todd Campbell, who have been Deerwood blacksmiths in their past, that worked tirelessly this spring on their evenings and afternoons and evenings to renovate the forge and really turn it into a very special workplace. And kids love it there. The climbers Biff was instrumental in, we had instrumental in turning one of Andy Shabbat's old barns into an indoor climbing facility, and was incredible. His design to practical application skills and making that happen. And the boys learn the ropes in there and then can go to Rumney, just 20 minutes away for some amazing climbing. Or to Waterville Valley on a hot day. And, climbing and mountain biking are again, newer activities. You didn't see them in early Deerwood or in the Asquam photos. But we have a network of trails, and one of the other barns is our bike center. And then, as you know, they're wonderful trails, and down at Franklin by the dam, and right out of Plymouth, they call the Gyroscope, and great places to visit. Camp Craft is the activity where the boys learn all the skills they need for the overnight camping trips. And again, trips are a big part of it. You probably all can know where this is, and looking back towards Deerwood. Boys from Florida that had never seen snow before get to climb up to Tuckerman's Ravine and have a snowball fight. And then the Asquam trampers, didn't carry much on their backs because they had the wagons, but they went for sometimes longer trips or longer days. But some of our boys will, hike with everything they need through the Whites. It's a campsite on the Connecticut River. And then after 50 years, we're a little bit bigger. I probably got to about 120 campers, and this may be a little less than that, given that I think this was 94, and we may have still been coming out of our lowest numbers due to a recession. We're in the early 90s, and so kind of getting back up to 120. Going to turn it over to Biff to talk a little bit about the Deerwood Foundation, because he has recently been the executive director serving the foundation.
The foundation was set up in 1994 in memory of Ferris Thompson. And funds came in quickly, and we were able to establish sponsor 3 boys for the summer of 1994. Now we're up to about 26 a year. And we have 2 sessions during the summer. And so we will provide 26 half session campers. We have a search out for kids coming from inner city that would not have a chance to experience a northern New England summer. We want more diversity within our campers. We're fortunate in that camp can survive in spite of having economy that only really relies on wealthy folks to be able to send their kids. So we wanted to provide help for families that couldn't afford to send their children to camp. So we have a network of folks that will say, hey, we've got someone that might be interested in camp, and we can pick them up for the foundation. We also have a number of organizations that contribute campers to us. We try to get 4 or 5 years out of a camper. So our intention is to give a scholarship for more than 1 year, more than one 3.5 week or 7-week experience. Those have worked out well. We've had Worcester Boys and Girls Club, the Immokalee Foundation out of Florida, Harlem Lacrosse, and other organizations are providing good campers to us. We have one big fundraiser a year, and we seem to do well in getting the monies we need to support this. We also have, one of the missions is to provide the same experience to local boys who may not, they live in the area, but not have the experience of living on a lake and doing some of the things that Deerwood does, such as the blacksmithing and woodworking and overnight trips. So we do have a lot of kids from this area over the last quite a few years.
Thanks, Bev. All right, a few, I'll go through these quickly. A few events at Deerwood that are unique. The camp relay is a fun one. You can see in the center of the photo, the blue and gray batons. And so we have 65 blues against 65 grays. We don't play sports against other camps like Asquam did and some others do now, but every boy has a job, and the first boy gets a ringer at horseshoes and passes the baton, and somebody might hit the wiffle ball over the roof of the main lodge, and somebody else might pound in a 16 penny nail into a block of wood. And it goes all through camp up to Campcraft, where they boil water and have a fire set and boil a cup of water. And one boy pops a balloon at archery. And then it ends on the water with lots of relay type of things. And this guy, you can see he's got the baton tucked in his life jacket to do his kayak roll. And then the war canoe, you'll see the war canoes racing at times going parallel to the shore. The one time you see them racing out to Diamond Ledge is during the relay. That's the second to last event. And the last one is a little guy swimming out to the tower and getting a kiss and jumping off to end the relay. That's the, and these end of the relay photos kind of remind us of some of the magical parts of camp, is that the interactions between the boys of different ages, and at home, they're all in the same grade. At school, they're all on the same age sports team. And it's so neat at camp to see the little guys looking up to the big guys, the older campers looking out for the little ones. Everybody knows each other. And it's really kind of a neat mentoring environment. Another event, you might have seen the relay driving by on the water, and you might have seen driving by on the field, the water battle, much anticipated event. All the boys have a bag of flour around their neck, and the object is to soak the bags on the other team and keep yours dry. There's some bigger bags in the goals that are defended. Not so well sometimes, but and that's a bag that's worth no points there when it's split open like that. And you'd be amazed at how quickly that when you tell the captains that they get points off for a scrap of a water balloon or a plastic bag left on their side of the field at the end, how quickly 130 boys can clean up a big mess. We make the most of the weather, and when we can't water ski if it's too windy, sometimes we'll try it a different way, or if it's too rainy to play tennis or be on the lake, we play mud speedball, a Deerwood invention that's a little bit like soccer, a little bit like handball, a little bit like lacrosse. And then just a series of then and now photos. Some of the old ones on the left are from Asquam, and some are early Deerwood, but we're marveling at the guy at the top of the Asquam Tower. It looks like his job is to hold that ladder to make sure it doesn't break off when the guy above him is diving in. Biff talked about the tree talk tradition that went between Asquam and then over to Pasquaney and now at Deerwood. And so this is a list of the preachers and tree talks from 1902 at Asquam, and And just in the last 10 years here, from our Deerwood newsletter, we still do the chapel talks and the tree talks. We don't import the ministers from all over like Asquam did, but our senior counselors are great at giving values type of talks and lessons from their lives and stories. Music is a big part of it. We both on the smaller scale and then with the whole camp on the front porch of Thai after tree talk, and have a lot of fun in the musicals at the end of camp in the shows. Part of the Asquam Carnival was water carnival was canoe jousting, and we used to do it in canoes and found it a little safer and gentler on the boats to do it on windsurfers more recently. On the left, what we used to call the rubber raft was a World War II inflatable bridge that they could blow up and cross a stream with in jeeps and kind of ford a creek. And we had one of those. I don't know where Buck got it, but it was the place to either sunbathe or wrestle. And if you got pulled across those metal grommets and sun bleach ropes, your belly got a little scraped. And on the right hand picture, you can see what we call now the wrestle raft in the background. I couldn't find a closer one, but it's just a very heavy raft that's padded with 2 layers of 2-inch foam and then a nice slippery tarp, and it's a kinder, gentler place to wrestle. Chapel by the lake, both Asquam and Deerwood at one time had chapels up on the hill. You can see we've let the laurel and things grow back in on the shoreline there, and both helps with privacy and little boat noise on Sunday morning, which I think is a little bit greater than 120 years ago. Still some counselors dressing up in costume for special events like 4th of July Carnival and Casino Night. Ski boats have changed over the years from the big long 25-foot Chris Craft to a Ski-Doo to a Ski Nautique, but the philosophy and fun are still the same. A lot of the same awards and trophies in both pictures here from the 40s and 2019. And then this is, we saw group photos from 25 or first year and 25 years in and 50 years in. This is 75 years in. We really liked being in the right around 120, 125 boys. I blame my uncle, who one year said yes to too many registrations coming in. And so we built a cabin in a hurry in May in the mid-90s and have committed to staying 135 boys ever since. So the last 25 years, we've kept this number and had the good fortune to be filled each year quite early. Going forward, this is the most recent project, and please come stop in and take a peek if you'd like. It's our new theater up above where we have chairs we can roll in, or our hope is to roll in some ping pong tables for rainy days as well. But it's an amazing space, and once again, couldn't have done it without Biff up solving problems in the barn building realm 2 years ago. One of the neat features that the kids love is the underneath space, which has AstroTurf, has turf down below, so they'll play short-sided soccer or dodgeball underneath on a rainy day. And we've with the way the weather's going, sometimes we get three rainy days in a row, and it's nice to have a few more options for places for them to be inside. As long as we're I mentioned before, we're so fortunate to have the staff that we have, and it really goes back to my grandfather in the 40s and 50s, having a much loved staff member who gets married, starts a family. And even just 20 years ago, I was talking with a friend from college who worked at Pasquani, and he was at that stage in his life and felt that it wasn't, there wasn't a place for people and, families at the camp anymore. And Buck really saw that it had a desire to keep those good people there. And so we've got these cottages where the families can stay, and folks like Biff and Janine and that have been there with some of our senior counselors now have sons who have been counselors that grew up at Deerwood. And we won't tell them though about it. I snuck this one in, Biff. Won't tell them about the benefits package, the 30 and 40-year people, that when you get to 50 years at Deerwood, you get a coupon for a day off in the summer. So that was try to surprise Biff with that two years ago. And I'm pretty sure it has not yet been redeemed. I think the last slide I have coming up here is a 1-minute video. Looks like we're pretty good on time, and if Kathy said, if there's questions at the end, we're happy to stay on. But we were so fortunate to have a couple hundred alumni come back, alumni and family members, for our 75th reunion in 2019 at the end of our 75th summer. And I took a little iPhone video of some of the music that happened during the gathering. And so that I think it's 1 minute and 20 seconds or something. Might get a sense of being inside the main lodge and the Deerwood community from this last video here.
No sound, Lauren.
Oh, no sound?
No.
Oh. Sorry.
Good video, no sound.
Okay. I don't know how to get
If you, on this share screen,
what's that?
there's a thing when you start to share your screen, down the
Yeah.
left-hand corner, there's a little checkbox to share the sound. You can try that.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, sorry. That might be I don't see that, but well, I can, let me
Let's
try
go to
one more.
questions.
We should go to questions. Yeah. I think, okay. Are we back on? Can we?
Yeah, we're back. We can see faces and names. Are there some questions that people have that we could raise right now? I'll just bring something up, Lauren and Biff. I don't feel like I see those war canoes. I can remember years ago up from our deck looking down and seeing those canoes in a line heading across the lake, or the sunfish, and certainly growing up and seeing the ski jump that was always impressive. I think some of us wanted to get over there sometime when you all weren't down at the beach and take advantage of that. I don't know how many people, non-campers, have gone off or did go off that ski jump you had in front of the camp there. But I have such fond memories, and I appreciate all the time that you and Biff have put into this, because it's just been so thorough and entertaining. I've learned so much about this group. Our son went there for one season, and Rich worked in that workshop. And I think his brother came to visit one time and said Rich's blade was on backwards, and we were all horrified. What
Well-
might have happened to some campers. And Susan, are you still on? I don't know if she's on, but we'll have to get
Yes,
Singing Eagle.
I'm here.
And Susan, can you quickly jump in on your role with Singing Eagle Lodge and the Deerwood and Camp Deerwood?
Well, Singing Eagle started at Deerwood in 1975. I can't tell you how wonderful it's been to have a partnership with Deerwood. They're just great people. But so we've been there for quite a while, and we're there for 2 weeks. Deerwood would go home one day and we would come the next. And they performed a miracle to get ready for us. I don't know how they did it. So we don't do all the things they do. We don't do the water skiing. We don't have riflery, things like that. But it's been wonderful.
That's great.
So we have a 2-week regular camp for girls, having had an 8-week camp over in Center Harbor up until '66. And I have to say, full disclosure, that Kathy was a camper.
I was a pine.
I remember her. Long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions? And by the way, I think that the person to ask might be Peter Francesco about that boat, the Asquam. He might know something about that. But as soon as you said it was gas, I thought maybe he wouldn't. But he's got some knowledge of those steam boats out on the lake. Has a couple, I believe. So if there are no questions, I'm going to let everybody go. And we're really grateful again, Lauren, and I hope Peter, I know he couldn't join us tonight. I wish him well, and you all a great season, 2022 season coming up. And Biff, thank you for all the research that you've done, and we get to see you more often. So
Kathy,
thank
I
you,
figured out how to get onto this thing and unmute here for a moment.
Oh, Peter, yes.
So
what
no,
do you
no, I
know?
don't know about the boat, the Asquam, but I do not believe it was steam.
It wasn't. It was gas, he said. So
That's right. That's what. And there were multiple boats that and that Asquam may have belonged to the Asquam Transportation Company, which had the Telfer and the Zephyr and the Ashland, and there were several that they would load up in Ashland and bring up and deliver around the lake. Now, as you may know, my family, my father and my uncle and grandmother had the Trailways bus franchise, or sold the tickets in the center of town, and we would take all of the camper steamer trunks that arrived by bus and bring them into the store so they were safe until someone came down with the Deerwood truck, and we could load them on, and the campers could then get all their clothing and their goods. Now, I came on late. I want to know, did you have a photograph of water skiing behind the war canoe?
I do have a photo of that. I didn't show it, and I showed water skiing behind the Hobie Cat, but I can certainly pull that up if anybody wants to hang around. I could probably find it.
I was just curious. The other one that I again, I came on late is when the Deerwood campers, I believe the year was around 65, when the lake was so low and the Deerwood campers took trees and platforms out to Diamond Ledge, which had appeared, and claimed it as their own island. And somewhere you've got a photograph of that, I think.
I want to say 61. Yeah.
You're very right, Peter. And we do have that in the office. And actually, I'd remembered that and talked to Peter and Biff about it, but I forgot to put that in. But there's a newspaper article of Deerwood boys staking claim to the land that was the new island of Diamond Ledge. And
Right.
That's great.
another around the same time that I forgot to mention when I showed the water battle photos, but the the water battle began when some campers were kind of uppity and challenging the authority of the big buck and challenged him to a water fight at, you know, his sort of faction of camp. And he said, all right, we'll take you on, you know, under my conditions, and you guys get your water, fill up your whatever it was then, and, you know, go down to the other end of the field and set the time. And he had a friend at the fire department and kind of went out with my cousin Peter, who was just 9 or 10 years old, and at lunchtime, and came back with a, you know, the fire truck and hit it
Wow.
behind the row of trees, and then, you know, snaked the hose out through the trees and said, okay, we're ready. Let's start this water fight. And to hear my cousin Peter describe these young men getting bowled over by a powerful stream of water was pretty entertaining. That was the origins of the water battle.
There you go. There you go. Well,
Great stuff. Great stuff.
well,
I want to
thanks.
really thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank you for
So
your time.
fun. So
Thank you,
fun.
Biff. Thank you, Lauren. What a great time. Good luck this
Thank-
spring, summer.
Thank you, Kathy and Adam.
Thank you.
Appreciate all your help.
Oh, great. All right. Take care, everybody.